The Church's darkest conspiracies they don't want you to know, Catholic mystery. Let's journey into the depths of control and authority, unraveling how ancient myths were ingeniously transformed to serve agendas far removed from their original intent. The mythology of the ancient Sumerians was a masterpiece of complexity and forward-thinking ideas, painting humanity not as inherently flawed or sinful, but as equal participants in a harmonious dance with the divine. Their gods didn't rule through fear or demand unquestioning loyalty. Instead, they engaged in a balanced, mutual relationship with humans. Yet, as these narratives were inherited by later religious traditions, something profound shifted, altering their essence and purpose entirely. Join us on this journey as we question reality and consider what society could become if we all awakened to these profound truths. Don't forget to leave comment below this video to tell about other topics that you want to discover on realm of Bible stories, mythic stories, or the mysteries of faith, religions. Together we share, we will have deeper knowledge and understanding of spiritual matters. The deliberate change by the Hebrews in inheriting the Sumerian myths. The Hebrew texts, which would eventually form the Old Testament, adopted many of these Sumerian narratives but made drastic changes. They stripped away the layers of nuance and divine balance, instead leaning heavily into themes of obedience, submission, and a single dominating authority. This wasn't just an innocent shift in storytelling. It was a rebranding of divine law with a political agenda. Sumerian mythology presented a world where multiple deities had distinct personalities, and there wasn't one all-controlling god ruling over the rest. Anu might have been the supreme ruler, but he wasn't micromanaging every detail of human life. Enlil had destructive tendencies, sure, but he didn't demand total subservience. Enki, on the other hand, encouraged knowledge, independence, and even a little rebellion. In Sumerian culture, divinity didn't mean control. It meant coexistence with humanity, with growth and survival as the focus. However, with the shift to monotheism, especially in early Hebrew culture, there was a dramatic centralization of divine power. Instead of a council of gods with differing motivations, we get a single all-encompassing God who is both the creator and the judge, ruling with an iron fist. Why this change? Think about the implications. A single centralized God that requires total obedience and punishes dissent is the perfect foundation for a system of control. In a society moving toward kingship and empire, what better tool than a religion that demands complete loyalty, not just to the God, but to the authorities claiming to represent him? This shift didn't happen overnight. Scholars believe that these transformations in religious narratives were intentional, with political and priestly classes shaping the stories to support their own authority. We see this shift starkly in the biblical flood narrative. In Sumerian myth, the decision to destroy humanity is met with defiance by Enki, who saves humanity because he sees them as worthy of survival. But in the biblical version, that tension is lost. There's no divine protector stepping in to save humanity, only Noah, a chosen man obedient to God, who is spared while the rest of humanity perishes. The lesson becomes one of compliance. Obey and be saved, question and be destroyed. Now let's talk about the consequences of that shift. By removing the protector figure like Enki, the message of independence and knowledge takes a backseat to obedience. It sets up a hierarchy where the priestly class, the interpreters of divine will, hold the keys to salvation. If you control access to divine knowledge, you control the people, is presented as absolute, and deviation is met with severe punishment. This marked a significant pivot from the Sumerian worldview, where gods had individual agendas and humans had agency, even the ability to challenge or bargain with the divine. This rebranding of ancient myths wasn't just about spiritual beliefs, it was about consolidating control. Imagine the priests and rulers of a fledgling Israel examining Sumeria's rich mythology and seeing a wealth of narratives that could be reshaped to fit a more centralized system. A system where one God means one truth, one law, and one ruler. It's efficient, powerful, and demands absolute loyalty. With this new theology in place, anyone challenging the status quo wasn't just questioning authority, they were going against God himself. We see hints of this political agenda in the commandments and laws throughout the Old Testament, where obedience isn't just suggested, it's enforced with the threat of divine wrath. The Sumerians didn't have this rigid, fear-driven relationship with their gods. Their myths allowed for gods who made mistakes, who disagreed, and who could even be persuaded by humans. But in the Hebrew texts, this balance is shattered. We're introduced to a God who doesn't negotiate, and that God, positioned as the ultimate authority, happens to align perfectly with the needs of a centralized government or ruling class. The change of power structure. In myths, from polytheism to one God, one law, and one governing system. This shift wasn't unique to Israel. We see similar trends in other ancient civilizations, where myths were adapted to fit the needs of the ruling elite. The Egyptians had pharaohs considered divine, the Romans deified their emperors, and the Greeks created a pantheon that mirrored their political structures. But in the Hebrew Bible, we see the beginning of a complete transformation, from polytheistic storytelling to strict monotheism, a God beyond question, representing an authority beyond question. So what does this tell us? It suggests that the biblical stories we know might not have been written purely for spiritual guidance. They were also crafted as tools of social engineering, a way to unite people under one God, one law, and one governing system. By taking Sumerian stories and stripping them of their multi-layered deities and cooperative divinities, the new monotheistic version enforced a rigid structure that left no room for negotiation. And that's a big difference. A God that demands obedience is much easier to control than a pantheon that encourages bargaining, understanding, and even defiance. This isn't just about religion. It's about control, loyalty, and the consolidation of power. When we strip away the layers of myth, what we see is a shift from gods who walked alongside humanity to a God who stands above it, demanding obedience at all costs. In a time when ancient rulers sought to unify people under a single banner, what better way to achieve that than by reshaping mythology into a tool for authority? In the end, we're left with a question. How much of what we consider divine law is truly about faith, and how much of it was crafted to serve a ruling class that needed absolute loyalty? The repurposing of Sumerian myths wasn't just a cultural evolution. It was a calculated move to change how people understood their place in the world. It redefined humanity's relationship with the divine from one of mutual respect to one of submission. Where did the concept of the Holy Trinity actually come from? Now here's the kicker. We've been taught that the Holy Trinity, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, is a purely Christian concept. But if you dig into ancient history, especially the myths of Sumeria, you'll find something strange. Three godlike figures seem to parallel this trinity: Enki, Anu, and Enlil. It's almost as if there's a shadow trinity that predates Christianity by thousands of years, lying at the heart of Sumerian mythology. So who are these three? Let's start with Anu. In Sumerian myth, Anu is the god of the heavens, essentially the ultimate creator. He is distant and almost abstract, representing an unreachable power that governs all existence from above, an all-powerful, untouchable force. A god who rules from the heavens. Sound familiar? It's eerily similar to how the Father is portrayed in Christianity. A god beyond us, the source of everything, yet removed from human affairs. Then we have Enlil. Enlil is often seen as a storm god, representing the forces of nature, the air, and the earth. But here's where things get interesting. He's also known to be a harsh figure. In fact, some Sumerian texts even depict Enlil as a god who brings destruction upon humanity. A god who both protects and wields the power to destroy, enforcing order and control. It's easy to see shades of this in certain portrayals of God in the Old Testament. However, unlike the Old Testament's consistent portrayal, ancient texts show Enlil as raw and unpredictable. Some might even say he holds the darker power within the Trinity. And that brings us to Enki, perhaps the most fascinating of the three. Enki is the god of wisdom, the bringer of knowledge, creation, and even rebellion. In one Sumerian legend, Enki defies the other gods to protect humanity. Here's the twist. Enki is often associated with water, knowledge, and creativity. He's like the divine figure who steps down from his heavenly pedestal to connect with humans, a trickster, a savior, and sometimes a rebel. Now think of this in Christian terms. Who else comes to mind? Enki almost embodies elements of both the Holy Spirit, who grants wisdom, and the Son, who comes to save humanity. The parallels are uncanny, but the real question is, why? Why do we see such clear similarities between the Holy Trinity of Christianity and the Sumerian triad of Anu, Enlil, and Enki? Is it just coincidence? Or is there something more? Could these Sumerian gods have influenced the evolution of later religious beliefs, or been adapted into a new framework to fit monotheistic doctrines? This isn't just speculation. Historians and mythologists have documented the spread of ideas across ancient civilizations. Remember, Sumeria is one of the oldest known civilizations, predating ancient Israel by centuries. When early theologians were shaping the beliefs of the new Christian faith, could they have borrowed elements from these ancient gods, repurposing them to create something more palatable for their own doctrine? It's not just a fascinating theory. It might be the missing link in understanding the true origins of the Trinity concept. Most people believe that Genesis, the opening book of the Bible, presents a unique, one-of-a-kind creation story. But here's the catch. When we peel back the layers, the core narrative of Genesis echoes, loudly, ancient Sumerian myths that predate the Bible by thousands of years. In Genesis, we find the story of creation in 7 days, the division of the waters, the forming of the land, and the creation of humanity from the earth itself. But if we look at Sumerian myths, we find something startlingly similar. The Sumerians had a detailed cosmogony describing the separation of the heavens and the earth, a primordial battle against chaos, and the formation of humankind from clay. Sound familiar? In Sumerian mythology, the god Enki plays a role in creating humanity by shaping them from clay, mirroring the creation of Adam from dust in Genesis. Enki, known for his wisdom and his desire to empower and protect humans, creates a striking parallel. This isn't just a coincidence. It's almost as if the Genesis account is echoing the Sumerian myth, perhaps even borrowing it. And it goes deeper. The concept of a primordial sea or chaos, what the Bible calls the deep, or the waters, also appears in Sumerian mythology as the chaotic waters of Tiamat, the mother of the gods from whom all life and structure emerge. In both Genesis and Sumerian texts, we see this pattern of order emerging from chaos, light separated from darkness, and life molded from the earth. These creation narratives seem drawn from the same pool of ancient storytelling, yet they've been reshaped for different theological agendas. So why would the Bible, a text held as unique and divinely inspired, include elements that sound almost like a Sumerian remix? Historians suggest that as ancient cultures interacted, myths evolved and adapted. The Israelites lived in close proximity to Mesopotamian civilizations for centuries. Cultural exchange, adaptation, and reinterpretation were common in the ancient world. Mesopotamia wasn't just an influence, it was the cultural center of the time. The stories of their gods and creation were the dominant narratives in the region. What does this all boil down to? The Genesis creation story might not be the groundbreaking revelation we've been led to believe. Instead, it could be an ancient reworking of Sumerian ideas, fitted to the emerging theology of the Israelites. Rather than a single divine revelation, we might be looking at a deliberate preservation and adaptation of Sumerian stories, carefully rebranded to fit a monotheistic framework. In the ancient Sumerian texts, Enlil is portrayed as a god who rules with absolute power, a deity of storms and the atmosphere, not exactly known for compassion. In one story, Enlil becomes so fed up with the noise and behavior of humanity that he decides to wipe them out. That's right, Enlil orders a flood, intending to erase every human being on Earth because they had become too disruptive. Now think about that for a second. We're talking about a God willing to wipe out his own creations just to restore his own peace. This has an unmistakable parallel to the Great Flood in the Bible, where God decides to flood the earth and start over. But the Sumerian version is different in one key way. Here, it's Enlil who wants humanity gone, but it's Enki, his counterpart, who steps in, secretly warning a human hero, Atrahasis, about the impending flood and helping him build a boat to survive. Enki, who we've already discussed as the god of wisdom and compassion, essentially becomes humanity's savior. He defies Enlil's wrathful command, sneaking in to protect the human race from total destruction. What's striking here is the way this story sets up a powerful contrast between Enlil and Enki, one god who seeks control at any cost, and another who defies that control to protect humanity. It's a story of rebellion, not just in the cosmic sense, but also in the sense of divine defiance. Enki's move is bold, almost rebellious, defying the wishes of a higher god to do what he believes is right. Now fast forward to the biblical version, and we see an intriguing shift. In Genesis, there's no Enki figure stepping in to defy God. Instead, Noah is simply chosen to survive, with no divine conflict or rebellion involved. But what if that part of the story, the part where a god challenges another god to save humanity, was deliberately left out? What if the Hebrew writers reshaped this myth to fit a monotheistic view, stripping away the divine rebellion and focusing solely on a single omnipotent god's decision? The original Sumerian story isn't just about a flood, it's about a clash of wills between two powerful forces, one that sees humans as a problem to be erased, and another that sees them as beings worth saving. This dynamic, where a god seeks to protect humanity at any cost, even defying another god, adds a whole new layer to the story. It suggests a recognition of duality, a balance between justice and mercy, control and compassion, that was completely lost when the story was adapted. Here's something that might turn a few heads. Anu, the Sumerian god of the heavens, is not just another figure in mythology. He's more like the god of gods, the ultimate creator, holding supreme authority over everything. If this reminds you of the almighty and monotheistic faiths, you're not alone, because Anu's influence is no small coincidence. So, who exactly was Anu in Sumerian culture? Anu was the highest deity, ruling from the heavens beyond the reach of humanity. He wasn't just powerful, he was distant, a god whose domain was far above the earthly matters that Enki and Enlil concerned themselves with. Anu was the silent, almost detached force behind all existence, the one to whom other gods deferred. He embodied pure authority, a cosmic monarch who ruled not by interacting with humanity, but by maintaining the very structure of the universe. What's fascinating is how similar this is to the way we think of the Father in Christian theology, the transcendent, unreachable force governing all things. This isn't a God who walks among humans. It's a God who remains far above them, embodying an absolute and untouchable power. Anu wasn't involved in the daily affairs of humans. That was left to Enlil and Enki. Instead, he represented ultimate authority, the originator of cosmic order. Scholars believe that Anu's image as the supreme god may have shaped later ideas of a single all-powerful deity. When you look at Anu, you're essentially seeing an early version of what would become the concept of God in Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. In Sumerian culture, Anu didn't rule alone. He was at the top, yes, but he had a council of gods, with Enlil and Enki as major figures under him, each representing different aspects of divine rule. This wasn't a single solitary god as later monotheistic beliefs would have it, but a hierarchy of powerful beings working together to maintain balance, a god who shares power and recognizes the need for other forces to uphold order. This concept of a ruling hierarchy challenges the idea of a strictly singular god. The mythic about human in the Garden of Eden. Was it have another meaning in Sumerian culture? Now fast forward a few thousand years. What do we see? Monotheistic religions reshaped this concept, merging the roles into a single being who encompasses all aspects of power, wisdom, and authority. Anu's ancient rule is carried forward, but the parts played by Enlil and Enki are reabsorbed and redefined to fit a new doctrine. The Council of Gods becomes obsolete, and the supreme figure becomes all-encompassing, standing alone at the top. What we're seeing here is not a new idea, but a transformation. Anu's ancient rule stripped of its hierarchy and rebranded into a single, indivisible godhead. Enki, the Sumerian god of wisdom, water, and creation, isn't just any god in these ancient stories. He's the one who repeatedly breaks the rules set by higher powers, even going against Anu and Enlil, all for the sake of humanity. Enki doesn't just create humans, he protects them, empowers them, and, in some accounts, grants them forbidden knowledge. Enki isn't content to sit back and let humans struggle in ignorance. When other gods decree harsh rules or punishments, Enki steps in, often bending or outright breaking the laws of the divine order. In one ancient story, Enki reveals hidden knowledge to humans, giving them insight and skills that the other gods wanted to keep under wraps. This isn't just any act of defiance. It's a god who believes humanity deserves to understand the world around them, even if that means defying the divine hierarchy. And if we step back, it's hard not to draw parallels to other stories of forbidden knowledge. Think about it. A divine figure willing to go against the ruling powers to give humans wisdom they aren't supposed to have. Sounds a lot like the serpent in the Garden of Eden, right? But in the Sumerian story, Enki's actions are seen as compassionate, not treacherous. He isn't some devil figure leading humans astray. He's a protector who wants humans to thrive. This flips the entire narrative. What if the real story isn't about a fall from grace, but about a god who believed humanity deserved to grow and understand? And here's another layer often overlooked. Enki's gift of knowledge wasn't a one-time act. In multiple Sumerian myths, Enki plays the role of a teacher, even a mentor, helping humans advance and overcome hardships. He's not content to let humanity remain dependent on the gods. He's giving them the tools to be independent. In some ways, Enki's actions are the ultimate rebellion against divine authority, suggesting that humans deserve the same intelligence and resources as the gods. So, why would a story like this disappear, only to be replaced by one where gaining knowledge is seen as a sin? Think about it. Empowering humanity with knowledge and independence doesn't exactly align with a doctrine that emphasizes obedience and submission to a single, all-powerful God. By the time the Hebrew texts were taking shape, the image of a god encouraging self-reliance and curiosity would have posed a huge threat to the emerging monotheistic order. What we see in Enki is a god who doesn't demand blind obedience, but fosters informed understanding, a god who believes that humans have the right to knowledge and autonomy. This portrayal of Enki isn't just a footnote in ancient mythology. It's a challenge to the idea that humans are meant to remain subservient, ignorant, and dependent on divine permission for progress. Let's get real. After everything we've uncovered, the ancient Sumerian influences, the lost trinity of Enki, Anu, and Enlil, and the political power play, the question lingers: why? Why would later religious traditions, specifically the emerging Hebrew texts, want to erase or radically alter these stories? What did they have to gain by replacing these complex gods with a single, all-powerful deity who tolerates no rivals, no questions, and no opposition? The answer lies in the need for control. Imagine the power of a single, monolithic god, a god who represents absolute authority, whose laws are final and unchangeable. This shift wasn't just about religious belief. It was about establishing a system where one god means one ruler, one law, and one unified body of followers. No debates, no diversity of opinion, just submission to a higher authority. This wasn't merely a reshaping of faith, it was a consolidation of power designed to unify and control society. When the Hebrew priests and rulers embraced a single god and declared all other deities false, they weren't just crafting a new religion, they were building a political machine. The Sumerians had a council of gods, each with different roles, motivations, and responsibilities. They had Enki, who encouraged wisdom and self-reliance, Enlil, who represented nature's raw power, and Anu, the distant cosmic overseer. This council reflected a belief in balance, diversity, and even dissent within the divine. Gods could challenge each other, and figures like Enki could go against the grain to help humanity. But a system based on divine plurality doesn't fit a rigid hierarchical society demanding uniformity. It doesn't create a society of followers bound by a single truth. So, what happened when the ancient Israelites began to centralize their beliefs into what would become monotheism? They didn't just reject other gods, they erased an entire worldview. They transformed this ancient trinity of deities into a singular god who embodies absolute authority. Instead of Enki, Anu, and Enlil offering humanity wisdom, protection, and balance, we get a single deity who commands obedience. Period. And this wasn't accidental, it was strategic. In a society with a supreme singular deity, the ruling class, the priests, kings, and prophets, become the sole interpreters of divine will. They have direct access to this one God, giving them unparalleled authority. There's no competing voice, no divine dissenter like Enki to encourage the people to think for themselves. By erasing these multiple gods and merging their roles into a single, all-powerful figure, they streamlined the system. Questioning the leaders became synonymous with questioning God. It's brilliant, if a bit chilling. This shift wasn't unique to ancient Israel. Across cultures, we see complex polytheistic systems replaced by streamlined monotheisms or rigid hierarchies that serve political agendas. In Egypt, pharaohs were elevated as gods. In Rome, emperors demanded divine honors. But in ancient Israel, the shift went deeper. It wasn't just about elevating a ruler. It was about erasing the possibility of divine diversity entirely, reshaping God into a being whose will was interpreted exclusively by the chosen few. This consolidation of divine authority into one God didn't just change the way people worshipped, it fundamentally altered how they saw themselves. In the Sumerian worldview, humanity wasn't inherently flawed or sinful. Enki's interactions with humanity show a God who saw potential in people, who wanted them to thrive, even if it meant going against the established order. But in the monotheistic tradition that grew out of ancient Israel, humans are portrayed as inherently sinful, fallen beings in need of redemption. They're no longer partners in a divine relationship, they're subjects. Obedience becomes the highest virtue. This shift to monotheism wasn't just a theological change. It reshaped human self-identity, casting people as forever subservient, forever striving to live up to an unattainable divine standard. And let's not forget what was lost in this transformation. With the removal of figures like Enki, humanity lost its divine advocate, the one who encouraged knowledge and defied higher authority on their behalf. This wasn't just the loss of a mythological character, it was the loss of an idea. The idea that wisdom and autonomy are divine gifts. What replaced it was a doctrine that framed curiosity and self-empowerment as dangerous, even sinful. Knowledge became something to be guarded, controlled, and doled out only by those deemed worthy. By erasing Enki's influence, humanity was left with a narrative that discouraged questions, suppressed intellectual curiosity, and promoted obedience as the highest good. In closing, we've explored how the trinity of Enki, Anu, and Enlil offered a radically different approach to divinity, one that valued wisdom, balance, and even defiance. We've seen how these figures were reimagined, reshaped, and ultimately erased in favor of a god demanding absolute control. In that transformation, humanity's role shifted, from collaborators with the divine to subjects under divine rule. Thank you for watching and sticking with me through this journey into the shadows of ancient history and theology. If you've made it this far, I appreciate you more than you know. And if you want to know more about the conspiracies in the ancient history of religions, leave us comments below the video. Your engagement helps us continue creating more videos with higher quality. Make sure to hit the subscribe and bell buttons to don't miss any new one. See you next time. See you.